Hello, good day, and welcome to the Cheval Collection podcast number 2. I am George Westwell, the CEO of the Cheval Collection, London's leading luxury service department company, and delighted to welcome you to this podcast number 2, which actually follows on quite quickly from podcast number 1, which was only released last week. And that's because yesterday we had some really exciting news that we announced. And that news was that the Cheval Collection has signed a management agreement with the Chris Stewart Group in Edinburgh to operate 2 of their beautiful service departments based in Edinburgh itself. And coincidentally enough, it's actually a year today since we first met the Chris Stewart Group and started talking to them about the prospect of working together. And during that period of time, the team have been working really hard to bring this agreement to fruition. And I'm very pleased to have with us today one of the key team members who's been involved in this process and has probably spent more time than anybody else talking and emailing and working with the Chris Stewart Group to help us get this agreement in place. And that is Daniel Johansson, who is our Director of Development and Acquisition. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Daniel, before we go into any detail, can you just share with our listeners just an overview as to what your job entails?
Certainly, it's a good question, and there are some variations of that, but essentially the primary focus of my job is to bring in new business. And in my department, that means in the form of either a management agreement or by investing in or acquiring a property. But at all times, it's for the purpose of branding and managing the property as service departments, not offices, retail, or other uses. And there are obviously many layers to that. You can't be a master at everything, but you definitely need a passion for the industry, a lot of patience, and you need to enjoy forging new relationships. So for me, what's important in my role is that I understand the brands and the product, that I need to set out a clear strategy. I need to put together a good proposal, term sheets, financial projections, and also give a steer to the marketing team in terms of what specific collateral do I need in order to convince an owner to do business with us. So there's a lot of networking involved, staying on top of what's happening in the market and the industry and so on with competitors. Creating relationships is hugely important, and you do that by speaking to agents, developers, private equity houses, high net worth individuals, and so on, investors, institutions. Those are perhaps a given, but it's also really important that you speak to everyone in the industry, because you never know where that good introduction may come from. There are designers, architects, planners, lawyers, and it's just keeping a really good amount of contacts out there. So in addition, of course, I would travel around, which is a part I hugely enjoy, and you would regularly then visit and evaluate.
Not doing too much of that at the moment, though, are you?
No, unless you're in lockdown, of course. So when you then evaluate the project, it's not only the financials that matter. You need to look at it from drawings and ideally have a vision as to what it can turn into. Then going on, another key element is the negotiation, where you're trying to convince the other side that the fees that you're asking them to pay us, we can justify, and we're worth those fees that we're asking for. And then, of course, there's a lot of attention to detail that is needed to the legal side. And there are the commercial terms, but there are also a lot of other obligations. And of course, in our team, Laura, as our general counsel, would get heavily involved with that. Another aspect is then the detailed review and the analytical side. And Aldo in our team is working very closely with me on this as business analyst. And it's another crucial part of it. You're analyzing the data, you're building projections, and as we are a relatively small team, you then see the project really through from start to finish as well. Alongside us, working with the technical services team, because when you're reviewing drawings, and as I started by saying, you can't be a master at everything, you then involve that team to look at the drawings. What kind of space planning solutions can we present? So it's really, you kind of, just to complete the circle, when a deal has then finally been done, it's important not to disappear and to keep that relationship with the owner, because they may want to do business with you again.
Yeah, great, thanks for that. So a big job, so you no doubt deserve the big long job title to go with it.
That's right.
Okay, just one question that prompted out that before we actually go into the detail, that you talked about the position of the properties. These properties in Edinburgh have been deemed to be Cheval residences as opposed to Cheval Maison or My Lacanda. What is it about the properties that have put them into the Cheval residences portfolio?
Well, I thought we immediately recognized that they are of the highest possible standard. So they are of, in the hotel world, so to speak, in a 5-star section. It's a luxury product. And we felt they were definitely on par and or even in some of our portfolio, even surpassing that standard that we have, which we definitely recognize as being luxury. So, and our brands, of course, they consist of Cheval Residences, Cheval Maison, and our new brand to come, My Lacanda. So we felt immediately recognized that it was of the highest standard, so it should be recognized.
Okay, great. So, Daniel, let's not wait anymore. Let's get into the exciting part. And perhaps if you could just take us through some of the detail and hopefully show us some pictures of what these new properties look like.
Yes, so obviously, as you said, it's been in the making for pretty much a year. And the introduction had been made. Yourself, Mohammed, and John and so on had met with the Chris Stewart group. And I really picked it up from there. And it's been quite the journey. And I was speaking to Grant yesterday after obviously completing, and he's delighted he can go back to his day job. And I'm also delighted I can, obviously we've completed, and I can hand over the reins to you, to Mohammed, John and so on.
Yeah, and Grant, just for clarity, he's the Director of Operations for the Chris Stewart Group, yeah?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the properties are really amazing in my opinion, and Chris Stewart described it yesterday when we had our very special and unique virtual signing ceremony, that he said himself, I've been working, and this has been my company for 20 years, but these are really the crown jewels that we're handing over for you to manage and for you to look after. So they're very special. And so obviously,
no pressure then.
Excuse me?
No pressure then.
No pressure. No pressure at all on the team now. And of course, we've got some images which we could look into shortly.
Great. Well, let's do that, because I think, everybody, a few people have known about this for a while. Everybody got to know about it yesterday. So I think it's really going to be very exciting for them to start to see and get a feel for what these new additions to the Cheval collection are like. So if you could share your screen and let's take it away.
Yeah. And just as I do that, I mean, one of the best aspects for us and many operators is when you can get in a situation like we have, where we're getting into operational properties. These we can start with immediately, whereas not, of course, uncommon to wait 2, 3, sometimes 4 years for a property of this quality to finally open.
Yeah.
So that's amazing for us.
So the great thing about this is that we actually officially start operating them under the Cheval banner from the 1st of July this year, which is very exciting. I think the only disappointing thing at the moment is that because of the restrictions on COVID-19 travelling, we can't actually be up there with our new colleagues to actually meet them in person. And although we're doing it virtually, it's just not quite the same, is it?
That's right. So please do help me out with some of the history. I know you've been reading up on it, so but I will do my very best. So Cheval at the Edinburgh Grand. If we flick through first of all to the map, it's located at St Andrew Square, one of the very best locations in Edinburgh, where you have Princess Street, George Street, and so on. And it's just, as you can see, to the north of Edinburgh Waverley Station. The property itself opened in June 2018. It used to be the Royal Bank of Scotland's headquarters. There are 50 wonderful apartments in a configuration of studios, 1 bed, 2 beds, and also 3 beds. And one of them, 3 beds, is a penthouse with the most amazing rooftop terrace. There are also lots of restaurants and bars. When I say lots of, there's a Hawksmoor restaurant and bar that is separate, but also on property. But in addition to that, another ground floor small brasserie cafe and a bar, and below it sits together with another basement space which has another bar and restaurant that's called Lady Libertine.
Yeah. And I think, Daniel, I mean, Chris Stewart is a very respected developer, and he's become very well known for taking listed buildings like this and converting them and refurbishing them, ensuring that he still retains the grandeur of these beautiful buildings. And I know when I first visited this some time ago now, it was said to me that, you know, clearly it's a large building, and Chris could have probably put in 200 keys in it, but he's actually stuck to his values, and he's kept all that grandeur and splendour, as we'll see as go through the picture, which I think is an absolute brilliant decision.
Yes, and that's why it works with Cheval Residences as that brand, because we're trying to keep those guidelines where the apartments are larger in Cheval Residences, so that works well. So it's got this most amazing atrium running through the property. There are corridors off to the bedrooms from here. On the top left, it's the entrance.
That's stunning. That was a stunning picture. How many floors tall is it? Do you know? Can you remember?
There's about 6 stories.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the top left image is the entrance and reception, which also leads you off to the gymnasium or the restaurant and bar and Hawksmoor. And you can see throughout the images the standard of the apartments is super high. A lot of history with the wall paneling.
Wow.
And a selection of some of the images from the penthouse, which has this amazing rooftop terrace.
That's Carlton Hill in the background, I think, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And quickly leading on to Old Town Chambers, which will be known as Cheval Old Town Chambers. This opened 5 years ago. So it has been running for a little longer, but they have refurbished in the meantime. So the quality of the apartments internally is just outstanding. And again, 50 apartments with a configuration where you have studios, 1 beds and 2 beds. And what's interesting with this property, it will also have an extension to it, which should be ready at some time next year. So another 24 apartments joining the property. And that gives it obviously another edge, because it will have a much easier street entrance, and will have on site another restaurant and bar. If we look at the location, this one is just south of Waverley Station. You're coming down the Royal Mile from the castle, and you will come into Old Town and Old Town Chambers. Nice picture of Edinburgh, and a few images of the apartments themselves. It's quite a quirky building. There are duplex apartments, and they are, as you can see, they have exposed brickwork and so on. There's some listed aspects.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Just so much character.
That's right, and you can see there is a theme in the design. There's like a house style that Chris Stewart Group created, and of course we will not go in and make major changes to start with. If there's anything in terms of OS&E, we will only try to implement what are the must-haves for Cheval Collection. But the kitchens and so on already come fully fitted. They have, you have the full ability to stay short and long stay. and there's a great gym.
Yeah.
So that completes the slides of a few images. I'm
Great.
happy to take some more questions.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I guess one thing that always intrigues me, I mean, in your job and prior to joining us as well, you've travelled the world extensively, and you've seen and stayed in many hotel rooms, maybe not as many service department rooms, but these Edinburgh apartments. I mean, from your experience, I mean, how would you rate them? I mean, are they in the top 10% that you've seen the best, or on a global basis, how would you evaluate them?
Really, really high up there. And I could only compare it with, I guess, some of the very top branded residences, which some hotels and resorts try to tag on to their hotel. Because otherwise, before I joined Cheval Collection, service departments were not really on the radar for me. I had looked at some, and I just didn't really understand them and why you would choose one. But learning about Cheval Collections kind of restored my faith in service departments. And when I then had just joined, and then in addition went up to Edinburgh to see these, I thought, this is fantastic. We found exactly what matches ours, and letting others know that you can stay in really comfortable, luxurious, high specification apartments.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I mean, I think you're totally right. I mean, that is one of the challenges that we do have, is educating the travelling public as to what a service apartment is. I think we're getting a lot better at it, but it does take time. And I think the other challenge that we have is that the term service apartment covers so many different types of color. It's a much wider range, but it is a challenge. But it's good to hear that these are certainly right up there in your assessment. The actual management agreement itself, I mean, a lot of your career you've been involved in signing hotel management agreements. Does the process, or does anything change when it becomes a service department, or is it pretty much the same sort of process?
It is exactly the same, or at least the template we apply is exactly the same. So you have an initial term, you have the typical sort of base marketing, sometimes a central services fee or other recharges. You have a reservation fee if you have the central services office like we have, and then you have an incentive fee. So base and incentive and some marketing is the typical format, and we apply exactly the same. And there's nothing really different in the way that we take on the management of these properties for the owner. So the owner can take as much involvement or a backseat as they would like. And that's always the beauty with a management agreement. If the owner doesn't have the structure and the setup, literally we will operate and we will manage all of the day-to-day operation. So they're very similar.
Okay. Is there anything that we as a team have learned from this, that if we were signing another one starting tomorrow, that we'll be doing differently, or will we just do exactly the same what we've done? I mean, have we got it right this time around?
It's definitely been a learning process, because not only did we need to move very fast, but it's different to a typical build pre-opening process, getting a GM on board, which is assisting in the process, and then opening. We have gone through, or we are going through, basically a management takeover and integration, and it's quite different. So you need to have a lot of different, not necessarily skill set, because you apply the same, but slightly different process. So we needed to evaluate what systems could we integrate with, and what do we need from day one, and can we implement over time. And of course, you're inheriting staff. There's a team of 60 colleagues up in Edinburgh who will now be managed by Cheval Collection. So that needs to be handled really professionally, smoothly, and introduce the company policies and our DNA to them. So, but I would say it's been a huge learning experience for everyone.
Great.
I know you have, and a few of us have been through this, but it is different to a normal pre-opening. And I think what has come out is in that if we do this in the near future again, but also for another opening, we now have so many systems and processes in place that we're in an even better place than before.
Great. Okay, well, congratulations to you and the team for the third and fourth signing. It's great. We are all really looking forward to working with our new colleagues up in Edinburgh, and and really taking this brand and our relationship to a new level. I think also what we should highlight, which I think is a great thing, is that Chris Stewart himself said yesterday at our virtual signing ceremony that they had searched the globe for an operator. They are beautiful assets. They wanted the right fit, and I think it's absolutely brilliant that they had selected Cheval as their partner in this agreement as being that right fit. And let's hope many more will develop from them and also from other parts of the world. So, Daniel, thank you for your time. Thank you for your presentation, and we'll see you soon, if not in reality, virtually. So we'll sign off. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.